Hello, welcome back to the League of Extraordinary Atheists for Humanism, where we attempt to apply logic and reason to religion and politics. I'm here with my beautiful co-host, Christy Santiago. Say hello.
Me. Happy Friday, everyone.
And we are here also with our special guest, street epistemologist, Eddie.
What's up, guys?
Yay.
Awesome. So welcome. I'm very glad you could join us today. Could you fill us in about what your channel, Deep Discussions, is all about, and what street epistemology is? This is why I just call it SE most of the time.
Yeah,
because I can't say epistemology. But yeah, go ahead and fill us in.
The short story of street epistemology is Anthony Magnabosco. I'm sure you guys know who he is. He's really the one that took this off. He applied a Socratic approach to engaging with believers, and then it basically transformed into this way to talk with people about anything.
Yeah.
And so it's basically a way to talk to someone to evaluate how they came to their conclusion without it being an argument, without it being some sort of debate. And it's focused on a really calm environment in which you can really just talk about how you came to your conclusion, and then also whether that method that you're using to arrive at your conclusion is reliable or not. And so there's a bunch of examples online or on YouTube specifically, and one of my channels is my channel is one of them, and it's like an ongoing experiment, honestly, because we actually just ask people to pick a belief, whatever it is, and then we just evaluate it. That's the short story.
It's so needed. Everything you just mentioned is so needed.
Yeah.
In so many topics of conversation.
And then at the end, we just tell them how they're wrong. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
No, I never saw that part. I must miss that.
Yeah.
So I know you usually don't answer questions before you do any street epistemology stuff. But are you a Christian atheist?
Oh, yeah. So I'll start by saying when you're having conversations like this, you really try to be neutral. It's not just that you don't admit your position, is that you try to eliminate your position. You set your conclusions aside and you go, all right, this is mine. I'm going to put that over there, and then I'm just going to evaluate yours. And so a lot of times, if you know little about the topic, you can actually do street epistemology even better. So my specific, where I'm coming from, I am an atheist. I was raised Mormon, but I don't think I ever really bought into it. And that is a whole other topic. My family is very, very deep into Mormonism, to the point where my mom and dad met when they were fleeing the United States to Mexico when polygamy got banned.
Wow.
So yeah, very deep. I think the reason why I have an interest in SE, or that got me into it, was because when I was being raised, there's all these conflicting beliefs, and I hear what my family's saying, I hear what my other family's saying, I hear what the world is saying, and I got good at just listening and evaluating things like that. So I kind of, that's why I kind of gravitated towards street epistemology.
Wow.
Awesome.
You're fortunate that the Mormon indoctrination, I guess you were just too skeptical as a kid, because it's one of the harder ones to break out of.
Yeah, it really didn't take. I honestly couldn't even say I believed in God the whole time. It was
Interesting.
It was one of those non-issues. It wasn't like I was indoctrinated. It was more like, okay, people are talking about this. That's weird. Whatever. I want to go play basketball, sort of thing. But it was all around me at the same time. So it was interesting.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
That's not a common story that I hear, or I'm sure Mac hears very often.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
No.
So have you looked into the Mormon faith like a whole lot, or did you mostly ignore it? Did you go through the Book of Mormon? I'm just curious.
Yeah, honestly, I think I am more educated on the Christian worldview than I am Mormonism, and that basically says how uninterested I was as a kid about what was going on around me. I think maybe the turning point in which it never came to a point where I engaged in Mormonism was because my dad got kicked out of the church because they found out he had multiple wives, and that's kind of crazy. So,
Wow.
and which is, I guess I should preface that with my upbringing was pretty normal, except my dad kind of jumped houses every day.
Yeah.
Dad's here for 2 days, dad leaves, dad comes back.
Right.
But he was a really humble and nice person, and nothing you would expect for like, what you consider a polygamist. But yeah, I think in a way a lot of people were victims of that whole culture. And I think my family was lucky enough to not be too influenced by it, but we still had the cultural, yeah. I don't know if that makes sense. So no, I don't know that much about Mormon theology. Like I didn't dive into it.
Well, if it didn't ever take and you didn't ever really look into it, I'm really curious to know what was it that made you think, I really want to know what people believe and why they think it's true. Like you obviously that has to be a huge part of your thinking for you to do this as a hobby. So
is it mostly the community aspect of it?
Actually, no. I think the way it went for me is religion was kind of one of those things, like people believe this weird things, and my family's kind of part of that. But I'm not. I grew up in Southern California. I grew up in San Diego, so the schools I went to were relatively normal, and so as I grew up, I found YouTube videos about atheist debates and atheist experience and Sam Harris and all that stuff. And that's when I really got interested, because it was more like addressing all the things that I wanted to ask, but it was not nice to ask. You know what I mean? And so I was always pretty polite. I always listened. All the conversations were happening in my family. And then I got I started watching all the atheist content. And I actually became kind of like a firebrand atheist online, like, comment section warrior type guy.
Yeah.
And then I, kind of settled and calmed down a little bit and settled into street epistemology.
Yes. I think that it is, if you really care and want to know, it is the better route of firebrand or asking questions. I find that the asking questions would, just without knowing anything about street epistemology, would seem kinder, and you could probably get answers instead of, get people doubling down. I believe it because I believe it, which I've heard that. And I've gotten that answer from people because I probably deserved it, because I was being, like, these are the facts, you idiot.
Right.
Awful.
Yeah. I think, honestly, for me, I became comfortable with, this sounds weird saying, but I'm comfortable with my atheism, in which, I've heard debates, I heard all the arguments, and I have my positions, and what I'm convinced is, true, and what I'm convinced is not true, and how I came up with that. And that's kind of when I calmed down and then realized, I think, when you're an atheist and you know all the arguments, and people have no clue about all the crap that's going on in religious thinking and all that stuff, you kind of want to talk to people about it, because you're like, I know all this. I know that argument. This is wrong because of this, and especially, if you're interested in it. But using street epistemology is a way to do that without pissing people off, or when I say do that, I mean it's an outlet. Like I like talking about these things, but it always has to be a debate. And now that I learned street epistemology, it's like, okay, it actually doesn't have to be a debate. I don't even really need to put someone in an uncomfortable position. We can just talk about this, in a natural way.
Yeah. I think Christy and I can definitely relate, especially with just like the outlet kind of aspect of it. Like that's why we do this show. We stay super duper informed on our politics and like current events, and also we came together through the like our atheist Twitter movement, whatever you want to call it, that community. So that's what we cover. We cover these topics because like we have to, and it's interesting to us. So, but yeah. So another question here before we get into things. How many atheists have you actually kind of come across and kind of gone with the stance of I believe there is no God, and so on and so forth?
Well, not much. I don't think I have any recorded interviews of example of someone who's an atheist, and that's just because I live in Texas now. So I live in Tyler, Texas, and honestly, I would love that. I'm kind of bored of talking about Christianity, honestly. Like if someone was like, "Yeah, I'm an atheist and I'm 100% confident there are no gods," I'd be like, "Yes, let's talk about this. How did you get there, and how could you be so confident?" And go through the steps. One, because I want to demonstrate how street epistemology can be this tool that anyone can use, and just because I agree with you doesn't mean I can't evaluate your epistemology, because you could use completely different methods getting to your conclusion, and you can reach the same conclusion I did, but in a really bad way. So
faulty methods.
Yeah, and two, just because as a content creator, like I want to have a variety of topics, and so anytime someone has a topic that I haven't talked about yet, I definitely love to go through it, because it's that's what makes street epistemology so fun, is because you have no idea what someone's going to say. It's like I don't have my okay, here's my Christian script, and here it's nothing like that. It's just like, let's just go through it.
Right. Do you get to use SE on politics often in Texas?
I have a couple of times, and I haven't had too much success. And what I mean is, like, it's not like the interviews I've had are like super interesting, but people tend to go towards the supernatural stuff. And honestly, I try to steer them away from that. Like, it doesn't have to be that. It can be something else. And like, oh, let's talk about this. So I really try to just leave it up to the person I'm talking to, because it's important. That's what makes it interesting. If I'm talking to someone who, doesn't really care that much about politics, it's not going to be an interesting conversation, even if I want to talk about that myself. So it's really just out of my hands.
Cool. Well, I would be an interesting candidate.
You would. So, Christy, I want to ask you then, and I meant to ask you earlier, but we can just make the decision here on the fly. I figured at least one of us should, take a position of atheism, and have him play with it, and then the other one of us should pick like a political topic.
Yeah, I'll do policy, of course.
Okay, so you do policy.
Bernie Sanders is the best candidate, and fight me. No, I'm just kidding.
Ooh, yeah, and fight me. So on a scale from 0% to 100%, where are you on fight me? Right?
I would never mean that in real life. So totally.
That's the part I want to see.
Silly.
Okay. All right, Eddie. Are you ready to get started?
Let's do this.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. Do you want to go first? Or you want me to go first, Christy?
Go for it. I'll meet myself.
Okay. All right. Yeah. if you're ready, then I'm good to take a positive what's the word I'm looking for?
Claim.
Claim. Yeah. That I'll do this. I'll try to make it more specific and something that I'm more comfortable with. Not just that there is no God, because there's a little more wiggle room for that. If you depending on how you define God, because some people gave those wacky definitions, but I think it is irrational to believe in a God. Okay. That's my claim.
It's irrational to believe in a God. Okay. And how confident would you say you are that it's irrational?
I would say 98%.
98%. That's pretty confident.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So yeah, when I get a confidence level, the next thing I do is just to ask, what are the reasons you are at that confidence level? So what reasons do you have to be at 98%?
All right. My reasons would be, and there's a few of them. One is I have been a Christian before, and I've also been a Christian, but one of those, I forget what the name of it is, if anyone else knows what it is, where like I believed in God, but he was like one of those all like encompass, like the God that's just everything and everywhere, not necessarily how we usually determine like what God is.
Like a pantheistic God?
Kind of. Like it was still mostly the Christian God, but it's just like a little different. Mm-hmm. So like I kind of played with the thoughts a little bit before I dropped the belief altogether. But what really got me there was, excuse me, was learning about astronomy, learning about evolution, and then listening to debates between Christians and atheists.
Okay. So out of those three reasons, listening to debates, learning about evolution, learning about astronomy, like if you had to pie chart your confidence level and split your confidence levels, mm-hmm. and those reasons, which one is like the biggest reason? Like if you took out one of those, what is going to drop it the most? What is contributing the most to that 98% confidence?
Probably actually the debates, the rationale that I heard. So mostly, to also narrow even more for you, is the arguments that had to deal with the problem of evil.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like theoretically, if you never came across the argument of evil, and if you could just imagine never hearing that, you wouldn't be at that 90% confidence level?
Yeah, I think it would probably lower it, because it seemed in understanding the problem of evil and that argument, it really messed what God would be for me. Mm-hmm. So if you would take away that argument, it would probably lower my confidence level that there is no God quite a bit.
Okay.
Just being honest, and I don't think I need to go any further.
Would you say it's maybe possible that that a God exists that isn't moral, or maybe like doesn't mind having evil?
Yes, yeah, like kind of deist kind of God. Yeah, I think that's more where my like I'm more like a 90, at least a 90%, 95%. I think there are no gods, like straight up. And that's where that 5% is. I'm like, yeah, maybe there's something, and it just doesn't give a shit about us. And why would we even call it God anyways? But I don't even believe that. And like, that's me just giving the most credence to the argument that I possibly can for argument's sake. I don't actually believe it. But that's, I think, the closest thing you could get to making sense for any kind of argument.
Yeah. So like, would you say that, that you're more confident that a good God doesn't exist, but you're still highly confident there are no gods, but a good God specifically probably would be like, you're like, no, that's not the case because of everything around me.
Yeah, I think you worded that really well. I don't need to make any adjustments.
So what have you ever thought about like what it would take for you to be less confident that there are no gods, or there is no good God? Like what would have to happen, or what would you have to learn?
I think I would need personal experience, but multiple. I would need like something to be like testable, absolutely, like not just in my head, I didn't bump my head kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think I would need multiple personal affirmations of like a spiritual realm or some kind of thing like that. Basically, like, especially if it's a God that's like an all-knowing kind of God, as Matt Dillahunty would say, he would know what I need to believe.
Mm-hmm.
So he would do that. And, and that would make me believe.
So I actually came up with an interesting proposition for atheists to think about, and that would be, if some guy came and knocked on your door and said, I'm actually God, and I'm going to be back in a week, and I want you to come up with some way for me to demonstrate that I'm God to you. So whatever you would like me to do, I'm going to do it, but I need you to think about it. And walks off. Now, to your point, if he's, really God, he knows everything, and he's going to know what you are wanting or need, to be demonstrated or what have you. But the exercise is, do you know what that looks like? Could you identify what it is? And sorry, go ahead.
That's a really good question. And my first thought, and this was mostly to be funny, was like, all right, he comes back and I say, just give me some double D's for a day. That would be pretty outrageous.
Okay.
I'd be like, all right, this guy can do things.
Yeah.
Okay. But no, though that would convince me he is something.
Right.
I mean, sky's the limit. I mean, I guess I would ask him to like for something big and cool, like, like show me the universe, like the beginning of time. Cause like one, I'd like to see that.
Yeah.
Two, I think that'd be moderately sufficient. That, or like show me heaven kind of thing, like show me these things that we hear claims of, like the most outrageous claims. Show me that those are viable.
Would it be even more convincing if before you could utter those words you just said right now, he said exactly what you were thinking and said, you want to see this, let's go?
Yeah, sure.
That would help. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And those are some of the things that I would think about as well. So like if you could take me through my entire childhood as like a movie and just go, oh yeah, here's this time and here's that time, and I can request certain moments in my life and he can take me there, and Because if you think about a being that is unlimited in his power and knowledge, the limit is your imagination. And so the real question is, what would it take? So I want to go back to one of the things you said about personal experience. Would it be necessary to you that all these tests be verified by anyone else, or would it happening to you personally be enough?
Excuse me. That's kind of why I was a little extra specific on my needs there, is because no, I don't think it would be good enough for anyone else's personal experience, because if that was the case, there's enough to choose from. For me, I would need a personal experience, but I would need it multiple times. Like God, God coming to my door and being like, "Hey, I'll be back in a week," and and then this will happen. I'm like, okay, that's at least a good start. Like, if it all happened within like a split second, I don't know if I'd be able to believe it. I'd have to be a little drawn out, so I know I didn't imagine anything. So he didn't like slip me something.
Yeah, exactly. So, there are examples of people, saying they've experienced God, and and they fail to mention that they just, took a hit of LSD or something.
Yeah, they do fail to mention that. It would have to be pretty viable for me to believe, because I know that the brain is very imaginative, to say the least. So I know not to trust it when it comes to things like that.
Would you say that it's conceivable that this being actually exists and we just don't know it yet?
Yeah, it's conceivable. There's a lot of evidence to go against like Junger's creationism. So that I'm pretty firm on. Okay, well, that's that kind of God, and that kind of story is pretty thoroughly debunked. But as basically, it's the small God claims, like where he gets super duper duper small to where, why would you even call him God? Like at this point, those are the kind of guys I'm just like, well, I guess like philosophically, that's possible. All right. I mean, if you make him small enough, God of the Gaps style, I guess he fits there.
Yeah,
that puddle's just for him.
As far as like claims in which what God has done and what's his name and what does he want, stuff like that, I think those are interesting questions. What if you've established that if you believe or established this being exists, but if we're not convinced that this being exists and we're just trying to establish that he exists, would you say that we have to like still consider the possibility that this being does exist, but it hasn't done X, Y, and Z like people thought it's done?
Sorry, could you repeat a little bit of that again?
Yeah, sorry. Would you say it's possible that all the stories about what God is and does and has done could be wrong, but there still be that God with similar attributes?
Yeah, I have high doubt in that. But I can conceivably say that sure. Yeah. I doubt it, but sure.
Yeah. I think I understand where you're coming from. It's more like you're not necessarily against knowing whether this being exists, but I think what you're saying is I have nothing to go on.
Right. Yeah. It's I really take a Matt Dillahunty stance on it. I think he really says it best. I would love to know if he'd like to come down and tell me that. That'd be wonderful. But if he's still this kind of moral monster, why call him God? And why would I worship him? Just because he exists, and he allows all these awful things, or causes all these awful things to happen, then I guess God by name, but not by like greatness. I may sound like an anti-theist because I am, but but no, I'm definitely open to knowing. Absolutely. I think it's always better to know the truth in any case. So even if that truth is horrible, or outrageous.
Do you think you could ever? Do you think you can experience something that could ever get you to the 100% mark? And by 100%, I mean you cannot be mistaken about this.
I want to say yes, and I want to say no at the same time, because I'm pretty highly confident that there is no God, and that is pretty irrational. But at the same time, I try my best to stay open and just open to conversations and stuff. And I feel like in trying to be that, I need to give a little bit. I need to be open to that concept for conversation's sake, and also just for looking at philosophical arguments sake. I do my best to not be at 100%, I guess, because I think sometimes to be at 100% makes you just closed off.
Yeah, so I'd agree. Cool. Yeah, I think that's the good stopping point.
Cool. Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah. What'd you think, Christy?
I liked it. Christy, what'd you think?
Had to unmute, and I just couldn't get to it fast enough. We enjoyed it. My partner got home, and so she's been listening too. Yes, and it's really, yes. Those are great questions and very honest answers. I mean, a lot of times it's, I don't know.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
A lot of times. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and there are a few people in our chat right now that, are totally new, like first experience with SE, and are so stoked because the person I'm talking about, Erie Ferry, she is into policies and what her government's doing and wanting to know what the truth is. Mm-hmm. Even if it hurts and it's horrendously sucky and you wish that you didn't know, she's like me in that. I'd still rather know what's true. Yeah. So I think, and to know that there is a way to talk to somebody who you vehemently disagree with, like on many important things, that you can still have conversations with them and get to know them. I think knowing when to say, okay, we're done, even if it's just been 4 minutes, is so important too. And I really wish I would have known those things before.
I do get a lot of comments like, "Oh my God, you have so much patience. I don't know how you do that. I would have flipped out." But to me, my reply to that is, you haven't set aside your stance on this. Yeah. You really have to try to go, all right, I'm neutral. I'm going to try to be neutral. It's really hard. Sometimes I'm not necessarily neutral, but or I don't act like it. But you, at least the goal is to try to be as neutral as you can. Yeah. And so when you talk with someone you like totally disagree with, the more you can set aside your belief, the easier it is, because there's no stakes. There's no like, I got to prove myself right. I got to prove you wrong. Right. It's just, I have to listen to what you're saying and represent what you're saying accurately. And so when you do that, it really it's a completely different atmosphere.
Right. So learning to steel man appropriately. Yeah.
Not necessarily steel man, because steel man is like to the best of your ability. You really want to just see where they're coming from, and if they have some unreliable ways they're coming to it, you can help them realize that and give them the tools to realize that, if that makes sense.
No,
because
it does.
your job isn't necessarily to make the case for them. Your job is to adequately understand what they're saying and then ask some very specific questions that help them reevaluate if they should have turned right instead of left, if that makes sense.
Right.
Like when you get here and your understanding is, I came up with that conclusion. Well, how did you rule out left instead of right? Right.
That's the big part, is how.
Yeah.
And why. Yeah. I like the question way of doing it and making them talk. I'm excited. It's exciting. It is. Yeah. It's always exciting. I get sucked into SE channels, and if I watch one and I have autoplay on, we'll be listening to them, and many times we'll both be like, oh my gosh, they have so much patience. I would, I can't keep talking to you. And that's I don't have that yet, because I don't.
Yeah, something
it would be very hard.
Something I really want to express to people is that I used to be like the guy that was like, just firebrand, making people, feel stupid, and engaging in argumentation that people never really wanted to. I was, scrolling down my newsfeed, and it's like, oh, that's a stupid, position, and then I just go at it and never even thought, like, does this person even really want to engage with me, sort of thing. I used to be that guy, and I think a lot of the times, my mentality was the truth is more important than your feelings. Just because you don't want to have this conversation, well, just because you are upset with what I'm saying, it's more important that you hear this than me be polite or something like that. But I feel like I'm wrong. I was wrong in that, and you have to meet people where they're at, because I can't say that I had any success stories where I'm like, yeah, I changed that person's mind and it's all good, because a lot of things that SE tries to convey is that, or tries to get around, is this idea of a backfire effect. I don't know if you guys ever heard of a backfire effect.
Yeah.
So the backfire effect is when you have attacked someone's position, and the result is they just become even more dug into their position. Yeah. They double down, and no matter what you say, they're going to believe what they're going to believe.
Yep.
And SE is really trying to avoid that.
I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I really do.
If I may, real quick, I do want to point out that one of the issues with that way of thinking and that way of confronting people, as you probably know, is that blowback effect, and also the fact that that's exactly how a lot of Christians indoctrinate people. That's how they preach their message. Like, look, it doesn't matter whether you like hearing what I'm saying. It's more important that you hear it. This is the truth. It doesn't matter if you like gay people; they all need to burn in hell, right? Because that's the truth. Like, it's how they look at it. I'm sorry, Christy, for saying that. It hurts to see.
I know. Whenever I read it, I'm like, oh God,
it's the worst.
That way. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's how they say it. It's like, it's their truth. That's what you need to listen to.
When we hear stuff like that in any kind of SE, when it's bigoted, or that's where I wouldn't be able to still talk to them. Unfortunately, right. At this point in my life, I wouldn't ever be mean or hurt their feelings. It would be the opposite. I would want to leave not a bad taste in their mouth being gay. But I would say I cannot have this conversation with you.
Right, because rightfully so, you don't want to have that conversation anymore, because that's just not how you talk to people.
No.
Like, I'm a big advocate now for free speech, because you need both people to be talking. That's why I like listening to debates. Is it's like, okay, I'm starting to like understand evolution more. How do I learn more about this? Because I don't get like I don't get into the data as much.
The clade.
The clades, like, and I can't go through all the reading, but I can listen to a debate and see which one makes more like logical sense, and like listen to like Kanthoven and Aaron Ra, and you walk away from that getting a pretty firm idea. The only other thing I want to say real quick is another reason why I super duper appreciate what you do, and what your community does, is because this is difficult. I've listened to at least 30 hours of these kind of conversations. And if you guys want a real treat, and I know the Erie Fairy just mentioned this person in the chat, Aaron Ra, he did some with Anthony Magnabosco, and he could not do it. No. He can't do street epistemology because he just turns it straight into a debate. And we lost our guest, but I'm sure he will be back momentarily.
I think but Aaron Ra also learns differently. I mean,
he does learn differently.
He seems like, to me, someone who reads facts, checks out if they fact out, and then he's like, okay, that's the truth. And then he's on to the next. So it's hard for him, because he learns that way, to be able to communicate to someone who, like, they see the fact, here's the stuff that backs it up, and they still don't believe it. And it's infuriating to me. But I mean, there's such a huge place for Aaron Ra and the way he does things. But I think there is such a huge place for street epistemology. And I think that they're all tools. I mean, being able to read facts and to fact check them, that's a tool. That's a skill. And being able to talk to someone who has bigoted beliefs and have a civilized conversation with them where you might even make them question some of those beliefs, it's a fucking skill. That's really, really hard to do. And watching these conversations, I have learned a lot on how to talk to people, but doing it is a totally different thing. And when it's someone close to you, family member or loved one, it's even harder. It takes a long time.
Yeah, it does.
And like he said, he summed it up perfectly. You have to be able to, your opinion doesn't matter here, has nothing to do with you. That's hard. It is. It's really hard. And maybe I'll try to remember that.
At least remember that it's difficult, so don't be discouraged.
Yeah. No, I will always keep trying to at least like leave every place I go a little bit better than the way I found it, kind of thing. And even if it's someone who thinks that my and Stacy's relationship is a sin, maybe one day they wouldn't because I was nice to them. And they're like, but that girl I knew was gay. You know, who knows? Yeah.
And an atheist.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, never mind. I'm going straight to hell.
Hey, Eddie, welcome back.
I'm back. Sorry about that, guys.
Oh, you're all good, man. So yeah. We just went through a little bit here. Did you watch that the Anthony Magnabosco? There were two, I think, with Aaron Ra, where he just couldn't do it.
Yeah, he was egging me on. He knew he wanted to fight.
Yeah, he could not do it. And I love Aaron. He's a powerhouse. Yes. He is a powerhouse of evolutionary arguments and like arguments with God. But he can't do
that big because it's all brains. I mean, I believe that.
All brains, no patience.
It's just all brains. It's all of the science data storaged, like, because he can pull it up, and he's impressive. Yes.
So, do you mind picking Christy's brain now?
Sure. Yeah, she's getting ready.
She's getting ready.
All right, what do you want? What would you like to talk about, Christy?
Politics, probably. I mean, I do have some strong beliefs in politics, and I know that, and I get it would be good to question them. So, gosh, like, I believe healthcare is right. I believe housing is a right. You know, I have really strong beliefs,
Okay.
so I don't. You want to start asking questions and see where we can go? Yeah.
So, let's talk about healthcare being a right.
Okay.
What do you mean when you say something is a right?
In a developed country where taxes pay for a legitimate, organized, working government, I think the people deserve healthcare as a right that they would pay through taxes instead of through private insurance companies that make profits from them. I think that only because of to me, reading all the data, we're the only developed nation that doesn't have it, and we spend the most. So to me, I think that it's silliness that we don't have it. And I think that if someone catches a cold and it turns into something worse, if they had really good insurance and could go to their doctor, they probably wouldn't have to go to the emergency room. And they would have checkups, and their doctor would know if they had cancer because of regular screenings instead of mom fell down the stairs and it's because cancer's all over her. You know, yeah.
Okay.
That's probably
So,
it.
I'm going to repeat back what I'm hearing, so just let me know if I'm hearing you correctly. You're saying that healthcare should be a right in developed countries because they have the means, the taxes, to provide such a service. And the reason why healthcare is so important is because if you don't have preventative healthcare where you can catch things early, it just becomes more expensive and more troublesome, and it causes long-term, expenses down the road.
Right. Yeah.
Would that be correct?
Yeah, that would be spot on.
Okay.
You heard me.
Okay. So would you say that not all countries have to or should have healthcare?
I mean, in a perfect world, yes, all countries where the government hasn't fallen under. Obviously, Libya couldn't provide. They have open slave trades right now. So I'm not talking about a failed state. Yeah, I would, in a perfect world, that would be great. But I live in this one, and so I think this one should have it like all the other developed ones.
Yeah. Like, hypothetically, could you think of a situation where all the citizens of a country would want this, but they couldn't provide it? Like, is that possible?
That's where we live. Most of it's like 80% want.
No, what I mean is, like, everyone wants it, but they can't provide it. It's not. Like, for example, if it's either provide healthcare or fend off opponents. If, like, for example,
I mean, I could see that a leader say, because we're in the middle of a war right now, healthcare is just going to have to go on the back burner.
Yeah.
In World War II, in this nation, we didn't have healthcare, but everybody had to pitch in. I mean, families had cars with no bumpers on them because all the metal had to go. We needed it for military. So yeah, I mean, I could see that happening.
Yeah, like maybe to a little more specifics on it. Like, we're World War II, we're going against Hitler, and it's not looking good. And if we don't win, then it's not looking good for the world. Like, would that be a position where we would say, okay, maybe we can't provide healthcare to everybody?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm not sure. I don't think anyone that I know would have a problem with that. I definitely would agree that better than being fed.
Yeah. What if there was a situation where the majority of the citizens didn't want to have universal healthcare? They wanted to do it a different way. Would that be something that would you would think we should still do it anyway, or would we need?
No, I wouldn't think that I would want, me personally, I want that. However, if there were, mountains of evidence showing that 80% of this country that I live in did not, under any circumstance, want it, I would hope that democracy would win out and we wouldn't get it, because I guess I'm a dreamer. I'm an idealist. That's what I would somehow, hopefully, be able to question that belief, why I still wanted something that my nation doesn't want. That's maybe pro-lifers should think of that.
Like, if you think, you're a typical Texan who's just like, you know what, I'm going to pay for me, you're going to pay for you. I don't think we need to start paying people's bills. They needed to be responsible for that, or something like that. If the majority of the country had that attitude and they voted, would that be something that you would go, okay, we'd have to respect democracy? Or would it be like, no, you don't know, you don't understand how much you need this, and it's going to cost you in the long run?
I guess my question would be varied. If the data, the research on it showed that it wouldn't save the country money and it wouldn't be better for people, and the country didn't want it, then I would be wrong and I shouldn't get that wish.
Yeah.
But I guess if it was as it is now, that the numbers show this specific answer, that healthcare for a nation paid for by the nation through taxes instead of, a $2,000 ride to the hospital here. It's ridiculous. So I would say I would still keep fighting for it. If the data showed that and the country wasn't ready and I knew it was right, I would still keep fighting for it. Yeah.
What would you say is like the worst case scenario if universal healthcare is a thing? What's like the worst case scenario that could happen? That you would say?
I have good answers for that one. Worst case scenario is that it gets torn apart and defunded by Congress. And so it has no choice but to be inadequate for people. And when things are inadequate for people, a majority of whom don't look into why they're miserable with a specific service, they just say that service sucks, which, maybe they're busy. I know that's the majority. So, that would be worst case scenario, that it got held up in Congress and defunded, little bits here and little bits here. And that would really suck. Nobody can fall asleep on this one. We got to stay awake.
What if it was like overfunded, that in which like they just kept on raising taxes, but not actually providing the care to the people paying the taxes, and it was just like salary raises for everyone?
Right. No, I don't think LEAH would stand for that. This channel would not be down for that at all. I would be writing my senator saying, what the hell, you got a raise, but my grandmother can't go to the doctors. Yeah, that would be awful. If it was over bloated, I think that could turn a lot of people off. People that aren't necessarily wealthy by any means, but they're comfortable and they're like, I really don't need this either way. And now it's all bloated. Yeah, I could see why they would have the means at the end of each month to give money to a politician to get these things changed. So yeah, that could be awful too. Big time. Gotta keep watching that.
So like, if we are getting ready to launch like universal healthcare, what would be like a deal breaker for you in which you wouldn't support it?
Ooh, that's a good question. Oh. Ooh, well, if it's the Medicare for All Bernie's bill, there's nothing in it as of right now that if all of it went through, I'd be okay with. I guess taking the funding, or no, I do know. Good. Okay, that was a really good question. I had to think about that. If we decided to pass Medicare for All and keep private insurance in the bill, to me, that's a no-go, because duh, like, if you keep your doctors and these people who are in it get to see the doctor they want, and then there's Medicare for all, who wants to have there be no networks. All doctors are in your network. All hospitals are in your network. Everything's in your network. You don't have to call and see. But they can't because there's private blocking them. There's going to be a problem. So that would be a deal breaker. I would not want that to be the bill. I would want it to be the Medicare for all bill.
Are you saying that, like, you would rather just keep it the way it is rather than have both at the same time?
That's a good question too. I would really, really have to think about that. I would have to read this proposed new bill that would have both and see if there was a sunset for it. Like if they have 3 years, that would be okay. I understand there's lots of people that have jobs in that industry that aren't the CEO. There's tons of you and me's that work at these, and they need to have time and training and move. They can still have that job, which is in the bill. You know, they would still have that job, but for the government's healthcare. So I agree with that. But if private was in it, would be the deal breaker. And if I mean, that is a really, really good one. I'll be thinking about that too. Yeah, I'll be thinking about that one.
Can I throw something at you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because
what if they were like, okay, we're passing the Bernie bill, it's going through, but the only way we can pass it is if Republicans can modify it to say that Congress can determine pricing, and the people, the companies that are providing the services can negotiate with Congress and provide contributions to their campaign. Would that be something that would fly?
No, actually, I would be okay with Congress negotiating prices. I think that's great. On paper, Congress representatives are there per us. They're supposed to represent us. So if you have a good congressperson in, then you negotiate away. And funding them, no, that couldn't be in there. That would be not good. Not good at all. Yeah.
What would you say?
Good coming from that.
What would you say to someone who said that by passing universal health care, you're taking your choice of negotiation from the citizen to a senator or a congressman?
I would say that they're right in that. they are. Yeah. I mean, they would be correct in that. I would hope that if our Congress people could negotiate prices for us and not drug companies, that is better. And so as it is right now, it's drug companies. And so I would rather it be the people that represent us, not the people that represent their bottom line. So yeah, I would say you're correct. And let me explain why. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, what'd you think?
It was fun. I'm going to be thinking about a couple of those because, yeah, those are good questions to, I mean, I thought there are a few things that I guess I would add to, you know, the being able to fund, if that was in the bill, that people could, I'm just going to call it bribery. That's what it is, that people could bribe our Congress people.
Yeah.
That would be a no, as well as keeping the insurance companies in. So there's two of them.
Yeah, because I mean, it seems to be the case that if there is a need that the government can fulfill and really bring everyone together in taxes and do what they're supposed to, beautiful things can happen.
I agree.
But the dangers is always, what if we don't have a healthy government? You know? Exactly.
Yeah. And you know, I always say democracy is not a spectator sport. And until I realized those words and started paying attention, I feel like there were a few decades in America's very recent past where all the adults kind of were sleeping. You know, I mean, they're doing it. Oh, the government's bad. And we're the government. Like, hello, people, we're it. And if we're sleeping, that means the people that want us to be sleeping are ruling. Think about that, you know, and that sounds conspiratorial, but I mean, that is what happened. And I think that there's a lot of us that are going, wait a minute, we are the government. So it's important who we get in there. And the government, as in an entity, a bad boogeyman, I've had to undoctrinate myself from. And there are people that want for them. So that's always going to be. That's why it's so important that we pay attention, in my eyes, to who we vote for and talk to each other about, hey, do you know who's running locally? I mean, let's go look it up, kind of thing, because those things so much matter now. They really do. When I realized we're the government and regular people like you and I should run for seats, that changed a lot. And that also made it like a lot of responsibility as well, that I should fact check what's coming to spoon fed on a platter. Here's your news, you know? And it's been a lot of responsibility, and also very freeing to know that I'm also in charge of that. Like, I get to choose. So the responsibility is there a lot, but also I'm informed. That's so freeing when I go to like make a choice. Voting is so important. When I go to vote, I know who I'm voting for. I know what their face looks like. I know their story. You know, I think I didn't used to do that. I didn't. Yeah. I did the basic research before.
When it comes to SE, when you're, whatever the claim is, when you're dealing with someone who is very confident in something like 98, 99%, it's always a good question to ask, like, would you know if you were mistaken about this? Ooh, is this something that you could identify? And one of the examples I give is a simple one, and that's gravity. If like we're very confident that gravity is working in a particular way, and you know it varies depending on where you are in the universe, but on Earth it works pretty regularly. And so if I have a belief that my pen is going to drop, there's a confirmation. The question next is, would I know if it didn't work, or if it worked in a different way? So like, can I identify what that looks like? If I let my pen go and it floats, or it sounds slower, or goes down, or goes up, or something like that, those are ways for me to go to identify, like, okay, I'm wrong about this. So, and we talk about certain beliefs. If you can't identify how you could be wrong, or how you would know if you're wrong, it's a possibility that you could be wrong and have no way to tell.
I'm writing those two questions down. They're so important.
So, like, for example, I had a discussion with someone who's saying that everything is designed and it's so obvious. And I asked him, what does undesigned look like? And he's like, well, everything is designed. I can't show you what undesigned looks like because everything's designed.
That was Bill, right?
Yeah. And so and the realization for him that wanting him to think about is, if he doesn't know what undesigned looks like or how to identify it, it could be right staring him in the face and he would have no idea. And so falsification is like very, very important when it comes to getting to a high degree of confidence.
Yes. It's very important in a lot of things I've found out in the last few years. Falsification is almost the most important thing in science, if not the most important thing in science.
Yeah.
Makes sense. I dig it. I do. I like thinking, you know, I've had to change my beliefs a lot in the last few years. Mac too. So we know what it's like to go, I might be completely fucking wrong about everything I believe. Hold on.
Yep. Only a lot of it.
So, all right. It gets easier, I think. It gets easier. And if I think that, oh God, I might be wrong on this, I'd rather be right. So I need to find out. And I think it is hard for humans to say I don't know, but it gets easier and easier.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's surprising. I'll do an interview with someone and they aren't even really committed to truth necessarily. They'll say, I'll ask them, is it important to you that the beliefs you have in your head are true? And sometimes people will surprise you and they'll say, it's not really important that it's true. It's important that it has utility.
What do you do with that? Like, my mind would be blown. I wouldn't know what to
Yeah.
What's the next question?
I mean, usually I try to give an example of how truth is important. So like when you're crossing the street, it's important that you look both ways. Why is it important? What does it matter? What's at stake here? And when you use like simple examples like that, they can more easily think freely, and then you revisit the belief again and say, well, what's at stake if all the beliefs you have right now are actually wrong? Right. Is there any negative side to this? So something like that.
No, that's a great. I think it would take me a second that someone didn't care, like they're telling me something they believe, but they don't really care if it's true. I don't know if we can be friends. Like, we might not have anything to talk about.
Yeah. Cool.
No, I wouldn't actually say that out loud or anything. I'm just being silly. But I think for that, there would be about a second and a half where my mind was like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you liked the SE interview.
I did. I enjoyed it a lot. I think that you have new subscribers tonight too. People are excited to learn how to talk to people about opposing beliefs or things that you just didn't even know were a belief. Yeah. Those are always interesting to me.
Can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever feel like I had a position on your claim and I was trying to make you
no, actually,
change your mind or something like that?
No, I didn't. I didn't even consider you had a position. I was like all about me.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I didn't actually. That's a good thing. I didn't think about it either way, honestly. So
good.
That's how you want to. I think that's you said that earlier when you have to forget about anything. It's not about you.
Yeah.
I think one of the lines that you often repeat is, I'm not saying this is the case. I think that helps because the way you frame it as you go into one of these conversations is just, you're trying to figure out why you believe whatever claim you're doing, and that you are basically just going to be the devil's advocate the whole time. It helps, when you don't state your biases for this, and then someone goes in knowing that they're going to be tested. I think that helps a lot. So even if it starts to sound like maybe you'd have the opposite position, well, they know what they got themselves into, so they can't really quite be sure because you're just doing what you said you would. So I think that helps, just the way that you frame it, and then saying that I'm not saying this is the case, but
and actually, when you ask that sort of question, it is very innocent, but it looks dangerous because you're presenting a proposition that say, if you were wrong about this particular thing, would it affect that thing? And the point of that is not to say that there actually could be wrong about that. The point is to understand, is this reason you're giving holding up your confidence? Now, this reason could be completely true. It could be completely true, and I could agree with you. But for one person, it could be the real reason why they believe, and for another, it's actually something they just say. And I have a good analogy to kind of explain what the purpose is behind that question. I'm not saying this is the case, but if this reason wasn't the case, wasn't true, would that affect your confidence? The point of that question is captured in this analogy. Have you guys ever had jambalaya?
Yes. Yeah.
So jambalaya is a spicy dish that has a lot of ingredients. So if I want to figure out what's making it spicy, and I try to ask the chef, like, hey, what is it that's spicy in the jambalaya? And he says, it's the bell peppers. The question would be, okay, so if I take the bell peppers out, is it going to be less spicy?
I like it.
And if they say, no, it's still going to be just as spicy, the answer is, okay, so then the bell peppers isn't what's making it spicy. Not saying the bell peppers isn't an ingredient or shouldn't be there. It's just not contributing to the spiciness of the dish.
Perfect to describe that.
And
yes.
In the same way, I'm not really trying to go after these reasons to say whether they're true or false yet, but I'm trying to figure out which one is the one that's really contributing to your confidence, because you can say the fine-tuning argument is why I believe in God. Okay, well, if you discovered that everything wasn't fine-tuned and there's a way more evidence, and if it was like to your satisfaction, you change your position on fine-tuning, would you be any less confident that a God exists? And I go, no, I wouldn't. Okay, well, let's move on to what really is giving you that confidence. There's no point in talking about something that really isn't a pillar to why you believe.
Yeah,
that's one of the things that like really takes me, is that some people don't understand the concept of having a foundation for their beliefs. Like they don't understand what makes them believe. So like they just honestly don't understand the concept of what you're asking. Just like they don't understand if you take out the bell peppers and it's still spicy kind of thing. Like, no, it's still spicy, but you just said the bell peppers make it spicy. Well, like the whole thing's spicy. That's not what you said.
Yeah. And yeah, it's why that we've come up with so many different thought exercises, or we call them like thought experiments, to try to illustrate a point or help them think through something without it being that sensitive topic that they're just not used to, digging into. So we'll talk about like the Ferrari example or the Tic Tac analogy to talk about
I love
how
that
something's truth.
I think that not only does it do that takes the kind of like emotional part out of it, but it also helps. I know America's population, I'm in Florida, you're in Texas, in the South, but all over, logic isn't something that's just taught at schools. It wasn't for so many people, and myself included. I think that they're like introduction to logic 101 without even teaching logic. What a gift it is for myself, when I see somebody who is having a straight epistemology conversation, when they take a long pause and you can just kind of see it click, like, that's the best. So
yeah,
I think that those thought experiments really help with applying logic as well, without teaching, like, hey, you're about to drop some logic on you. I love them. They do help.
What makes those moments so impactful is that it's not an outside source going in and making a claim. It's an internal dialogue, them going, that's a really good question.
Yeah, I did it myself.
Yeah. I've never thought about that. And what's happened, you really just want to let them think, because a lot of times, even when someone says something that is like, the bell peppers is why, and you go, okay, if you take the bell peppers out, would it be just as spicy? And they would go, yes. They may not even really realize what just happened. So sometimes you just have to repeat what they just said,
right,
and then it clicks. It's almost as if like one part, like, I'm not saying this is actually the case, but it's almost as if one part of their brain is saying something, and then only until you repeat it, or they have enough time for that thought to circle their brain for them to go, to hear them say it.
Yeah.
So if they just listen to themselves, what did I just say? That doesn't make any sense, Or
That's not how I thought it. Yeah.
that type of thinking isn't possible in a debate, because you're probably thinking about, all right, I'm going to say this and they're going to say that, and I'm preparing, and there's no internal dialogue at all.
Right.
There's just focusing on an external threat, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no dialogue at all, actually. It's points. I really I'm fascinated by conversations. Watching two people have a conversation that probably will change their life is just so fascinating to me. I could watch them, and I think that they're rewarding. Even if you are not the one getting questioned, I think that I've learned more than them by sitting on the outside. So I can only speak for myself that I think that it is it's needed. I don't know how to say that eloquently. It's so needed.
Yeah.
So I have a question then.
Yeah.
Have you ever come across after your conversations someone saying, I think you just changed my worldview, or has anyone come back to you and said, hey, I'm not Christian anymore, or I'm not this, or I have whole new justifications?
Yeah, no, I can't say that I have. I do think it's just a matter of time, just based off of how some conversations are left. I know that I made an impact. I know they probably need some more time to think about it. I do give people a card, so a way to contact me, and I think part of the reason why I may not have had someone contact me about changing their mind would be because I just don't do it enough. I've been doing it for 3 years, but I don't go out often. It's like I haven't done another interview in like a month, and I used to do it like 3 times a week sometimes. So I think someone like Anthony Magnabosco, who can, who does it regularly, more often, would, has those stories of, people changing their mind. A good example would be Daniel.
Yes.
Yeah.
I watched that not in real time, but the day it was posted, and then 6 months or 8 months later when he posted all their conversations, and then I was like, wait, who is that on ACA? What is going on? Mind blown.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just so proud of him. Like a little beacon
amazing.
of sunshine over there. It's so beautiful.
Yeah. And I can only imagine just even getting one person out of 100 to think differently is pretty rewarding.
It's pretty remarkable.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and also when you upload it, you're not only teaching people how to have these conversations, the people that are on, who agree with, who can understand the person we're talking to or share their beliefs, they can watch it without any threat, or they're not in the hot seat at all, and it's just like it can reach so many people to have such an honest dialogue.
Yeah.
I'll admit to losing some hungover magical thinking by watching people who held on to a little bit more than I did, but enough for me to go well, that's silly. God is love. That's really dumb. God is love. What does that even mean? Love is love, and nobody can even describe that. So let's just leave that alone.
Yeah, that's the one that usually goes with that. Is it the incredulity fallacy, where they just change the definition of love 3 different times for the same conversation?
Yeah. Energy is God, I've been told. I think that was the conversation that was being had, and I was like, how's that different than God is love?
Yeah. That now you get into an apologist territory, and when the apologist position is they're I would say it's very unlikely that you're going to have an honest conversation with someone like an apologist, because there's so much at stake.
And I don't think that I could have a healthy or productive conversation with someone who is an apologist. Honestly, I don't.
In fact, I got banned by Mike Winger on Twitter because I asked some really good questions about how.
Same.
Yeah.
Same. I've been blocked by many very theist YouTubers because, first of all, I got lady parts. And it's not, I shouldn't be teaching them anything about God per their Bible.
Were you talking to Mike Pence?
Boom, boom. He'll be here all week, everybody.
Well.
Oh, no. And the other reason was for asking really hard questions that there are no answers for. But it makes them, from my experience, almost, they get so defensive. And I mean, they're just like, question block. That it feels like. There's about 4 of them that have blocked me. Men, yeah. all of them are men.
Yeah, I think I was trying to think of an analogy to describe the relationship between an SEer and an apologist. And I feel like it's not the best analogy, but I feel like sometimes the apologist and the atheists are in a game and they're trying to win, and let's just say it's like a card game, and they're just arguing of who won continuously. Here comes the next game. Here's an argument, and we're still arguing about who won. And here comes this person, this SEer, saying, wait. So what are the rules? Okay, now that we established the rules, show me your hands. Let's figure out who actually won. And they're like, no. Like that, they think we're manipulative because we're trying to figure out how we've come to these conclusions.
Right.
So we try to discuss what the rules are and how the best way to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, you're making them think.
It throws them off. And they're like, no. If you want to play, then you go on that seat, and I'm not going to show you my cards. I'm like, wait, what are the rules? Well, we can talk about that later. Yes, not the best analogy, but I
do actually know. I do know. That's very difficult behavior to deal with for me personally. I don't know if it ever won't be, but very, very difficult. I would like to think that there's good in everyone, and if it was a one-on-one conversation, would someone like that be more honest instead of for a crowd wanting to make sure that their base stays are you not entertained?
Yeah.
I would like to think that, but I am not prepared or equipped to have that type of conversation with somebody like that.
Something else that has come up when it comes to having these conversations is it ever time to just say that it's not good to have this conversation? It's not going to be a good outcome for me to help you or me have you reflect on how you came to this conclusion. There's been some instances where it's like some people need their belief that's getting them through something. And I've had some disagreements with some of my subscribers about that, where I uploaded a video about when to walk away, when to not have that conversation.
I think that's
if I successfully have them think about their epistemology and they question this belief and it has a negative effect and it's going to cause them distress and they may not know how to go about help, like in a healthy way, dealing with whatever the issue is, like that's kind of irresponsible of me to say, I'm just going to tell you, or I'm just going to show how it's not really a reliable way to come to that conclusion. Okay, bye, have a nice day. And then they're just like, oh my God, like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're a big old human, and it all just showed. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, like for example, there's this one lady, I asked her what she wanted to talk about, and she says, well, I believe my son is in heaven. He died 2 months ago. And I was like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to have this conversation. That would not help.
Never. I couldn't either.
And
no.
Even in times where I'm not sure whether I should proceed, I really leave it up to them. So one of the questions I'll ask is, if you were wrong about this, like, would you want to know? And
Mm.
sometimes they'll say, I wouldn't want to know. And I
Wow.
say, hey, thanks for your honesty and have a nice day.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a real conversation to have. Like really speaking to those people who think, no, like you, like it's always best to give them the truth. Just, bam, here it is. But there's always that part that you need to pay attention to is like their mental health, right?
Mm-hmm.
If their son died 2 months ago, maybe they aren't in the best place for a complete paradigm shift right now, or an
10
existential
years
crisis.
ago.
Yeah, even then.
I couldn't imagine.
At the same time, though, I have seen again, Matt Dillahunty, mentioned him in his on one of his episodes of Atheist Experience. There was a woman who she was so devastated, like having this talk, and like I think she mentioned like her sister who was in heaven, and how she just like you could just hear her break down. She was realizing that maybe it's not true, and it was just killing her. But at the same time, like they did their best to like provide support and really like help the best that they could, because I think it is still important to have those conversations, because everyone deals with death. But sometimes when it's super fresh, it's not responsible. And then some people, you can tell if they're just not mentally stable as is, that maybe it's not the best way to do it, because not everyone can deal with that information in a positive way.
When it comes to Atheist Experience, you have people calling you, so there's a certain level of accountability when it comes to what you're getting yourself into. So you may not have realized how hard it would have been to have that conversation, but you were wanting to have it anyways. And then there's what I do. I literally just say, hey, you want to talk? But that's completely different. No one was really asking to do that. So I have to be very careful and make sure that I have a willing partner in a conversation.
Yes.
Right. Like you have to also moderate.
I heard that it's for people who truly believe, finding out that it's not true, that they have to mourn, not all, obviously, but some people have to mourn lost loved ones all over again, because it was till the time I see you again, I will miss you. And now it's shit. I think that I would weigh that out definitely too. I would never want to hurt somebody.
Yeah.
I actually have an interesting story about that. That kind of related. So I have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. Both are girls. And I remember always wanting to be honest with them when it comes to like the hard truths about life. And so they lost my wife's grandfather. And so we're at a funeral and they're wondering like, what's going on, what's happening. And so I told them the truth about, what's happening. Papa died, and it didn't really affect them very much. It was like, okay, they didn't understand what it was. And then again, my dad died so about a year ago. And so, the questions of what death is, kind of came about again. And there was this conversation I had with my 6-year-old, and she said, Daddy, are you going to die? And I was like, I got to be honest with her. And I said, I'm not, I said, everybody dies, thinking that would kind of be like a better example, or not as bad. It's kind of like, hey, everybody dies sort of thing. But that question quickly turned and she internalized it. And it was like, I don't want to die. I want to live forever. And I was like, oh, what did I just do? Right. And it took her about 10 seconds. And I was just trying to comfort her and make her realize that like, it's not going to be anytime soon. I have a long time. You have a really long time. Trying to console her with the situation. But then 10 minutes later, she's back to being a happy 6-year-old. And I realized it's better to have that conversation now than it is for her to be 30 and fall from the clouds because you thought everything was gravy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is my main reason for my anti-theist stance is if you have to like go back through those deaths in your head, that's a super fucking like net negative. And I think it's absolutely awful. That could have been avoided if you weren't lied to your whole life. That
heartbreaking.
Yeah, it is. It's heartbreaking just to think about. Yeah. I have a question from the chat.
Yes.
Real quick. It is a good one. This is from Nirvardia, a friend of the show. She asked,
and has her own channel. Everyone, make sure you respect to her because she's brilliant and her accent is so hot.
True that. All of it. Endorse all of it. All right. She asked, if you encounter someone who is elderly, disabled, or sick, but are in a cult like Jehovah's Witnesses, where if they stopped believing, they would lose their support structure, would you continue the conversation?
No. In fact, I've had a similar conversation with someone who was dying of cancer, and she readily admitted that her belief in God is her only reason for getting up in the morning.
Right. Yeah.
I was like, okay, done.
Right.
Yeah.
Agree 100%. No. I think that's a net negative too for the person who would be telling them. Like, shame on you. Shame on you.
Sometimes I'm really I'm really surprised like how open and honest someone is just to say that, I'm dying and this honestly is the reason why I get up. If I didn't have it, it'd be hard to get out of bed in the morning. And I'm just like, wow, like you are being completely honest with me. And that's why it's like I have this responsibility. I can do some serious damage if I don't take my responsibility serious.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely very responsible of you. I think that doing no harm first is so important. It's not just for doctors. It should be for everyone. Governments too.
It's a humanistic stance.
Yes.
So, I'd like to end by saying, first, thank you, Eddie, for coming on.
And I'm so
tonight.
Sorry about your loss.
Oh,
very, very sorry. Yeah.
You're very young, so.
He was very old.
That is what happened.
He was in his 80s. It's a long story. Polygamy,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get it?
I'm the youngest. I'm the youngest of 11 kids. So.
Oh wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
My mom's one of 8, so I mean I know what. Imagine they all have kids and they all have kids and we all have kids.
Yeah. So sorry.
I get it.
I interrupted your closing remarks.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I would like to mention that at some point when I'm all set and have a better schedule, I do plan on going out and doing this every now and then, doing the street epistemology. I think it's really awesome. And I think something else I'd like to do, excuse me, is especially since it's 2020 and we have this election coming up, is I want to use SE a little bit and just like my current knowledge on politics to help people determine who they should vote for based on their own values. Mm-hmm. So basically just give them like one of those online tests of, like, all right, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? What do you think about this? Okay, you should vote for this. But also give them, like where I'm coming from afterwards. And, like state my biases like afterwards, but also try to be very honest on like, all right, if this is what you believe, although I disagree with it, this is who you should probably vote for because they have your interests at heart the most.
Yeah.
So
vote.
Yeah.
Please just vote. I don't care. Ooh,
please vote. But
I'm not
I'd
sure.
like to do it through a SE way.
I'm not sure if you have like the equipment and all that stuff lined up to post this stuff on YouTube, but if you have an SE talk and you don't really have time or skill to edit it, you can I think go to streetepistemology.com and there's some information about how you can basically submit it, and if it's a good talk, they'll basically edit it for you, or you can probably reach out to Anthony Magnamosco yourself, and he'll make it happen.
Oh, that's awesome! I didn't know that. That's wonderful.
Hey, everybody in the chat, if you want to see Mac go out and do street epistemology, I don't know, do something.
Do something.
Be creative. Figure it out. You're all adults.
Christy, if you do SE, you have to start all of your titles as Florida man does, and then something like that.
Yes. Hey, I'm in Florida.
That's what Christy would have to do for sure.
Yeah.
I could start it with Ohio man, and it would be just as
Same.
just crazy.
Same.
All about abortion. Everyone.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
It is.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Well, again, thank you, Eddie, for coming on. Thank you, live chat, for being here. We have at least 25 people watched this tonight, so that was awesome. And the chat was really lovely. Like, everyone was like very, very positive in the chat, and it was really nice. So I appreciate all of you being here. I hope everyone has a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Eddie.
Real quick before we go.
Yes, please.
The way to contact me.
Yes,
first of all,
Plug your channel and everything.
my channel is Deep Discussions, and my Twitter, which is I'm most active in, is Deep Discussion 1.
Yes.
Cool. That's it. That's all I gotta say.
Awesome. I just posted his channel in the live chat again, so make sure you do subscribe.
I'm already subbed, so
And
y'all need to get with it.
get with it all. All right. We love you guys. Thank you so much for being here. We will see you next week. I believe we're finally gonna cover Iran next week. We don't have any guests lined up next week, so
I've
that
done a
deep
lot
dive is now
of
coming.
research, guys.
Yes. Be ready for a Christy deep dive. All right.
Yes.
Christy, close us out.
Stay humanist for Godless sake.